Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, details on how the state plans to review thousands of child abuse reports that went uninvestigated by Child Protective Services. Also tonight, we'll hear about efforts to build a Cactus League Hall of Fame, and we'll learn about a local landfill that uses everyday waste to produce electricity. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Arizona Department of Economic Security, which oversees Child Protective Services, released a plan last night to review over 6,000 child abuse reports that CPS essentially ignored. The Arizona Republic's Mary Jo Pitzel joins us. She's been covering the story. Good to have you here. There's a lot to go over, so let's do the best we can here, because I know you've been really covering this hard. This came out late last night. Give us an overview of the plan.
The plan is basically saying within 2 weeks, by December 2nd, we're going to have all of these. It is now 6,110 cases. We'll have all 6,100 cases looked at, reviewed. That doesn't mean investigated, but they're going to open them up, take a look at them, and see how those should be classified going forward. And they think they can get that done by the end of by December 2nd, I'm sorry, by Monday. So it's even sooner than I thought.
So they get a review, not a formal investigation, but a review.
Yes, yes. And they're almost halfway there. They've already looked at all of the cases, the reports that came in this calendar year, and have sorted through 2,900 of those reports, of which they've sent on almost 1,800 for investigation out to caseworkers.
So it sounds like 2/3, somewhere around there, to investigate. How many do you think possible criminal misconduct? How much was that involved?
Out of this first batch, they've identified 23 cases of possible criminal conduct.
All right. As far as classifying, it sounds like there are five different categories to classify as far as the review process is concerned. Talk to us about that.
Okay, now this I'm going to have to use my cheat sheet because I don't have all the categories memorized. But these are ways for the workers to decide, to help them to classify how severe, how unserious are the allegations. One is whether does it require an immediate response? That's the highest priority, or does it qualify for what they call an alternative investigation, which we can talk about in a little bit, or is this something that should get a look at by a caseworker? The alternative investigation is a way to not have it go to a caseworker but still be looked at. Or is this a case that's already open, that we're aware of this? And lastly, are there exceptions, such as, is the child involved now age 18? That's outside of CPS's purview. So they've set that criteria out. They say they have trained their staff. They've identified 257 staffers who will be working on this review, and then through December 2nd, and brief them on the protocol.
And so these 257 some odd folks, what happens to the work that they were doing heretofore?
Well, that's a big question, and that's a concern of many people, especially the members of the CPS Oversight Committee that works out at the legislature. Director Carter, in his work plan, has said, we're going to do our best to keep all the plates spinning, but you've just added 6,100 more plates to the circus.
And there was a backlog of plates, if you will. I mean, they were already running behind. You've got now, I know 6,100, you got quite a few now. About half of them have already been reviewed. That's still a lot of extra work. Is there concern that the work is going to be done correctly, and will quality work be done?
There is some concern. More that I think the bigger concern is all the firepower is going to go to looking at these 6,100 cases. And then what about everything that's been going on now? And what about cases that come in between now and January 31? Because that is the ultimate end date for, after they do the quick review, that's all done by next Monday. By January 31 is the deadline to have any report that requires investigation, to have that investigation wrapped up. So if the belief is that, and the fear is, all the attention will go to those cases and ongoing work, something's got to give. They're not getting more workers.
Yeah, we'll hear more about that, I'm sure. Now, I know DPS is kind of looking into all this. What exactly are they looking at?
They are reviewing the process that CPS used in initially categorizing these 6,100 reports as not investigated. And they will be looking at a sampling of the cases, sort of doing their own check on those. So that will give them, they are an investigative body. That's what DPS does, among other things. And so presumably they will look at some of these cases, some of which may have criminal conduct involved.
I was going to say, they are looking for something criminal, correct?
Well, I don't know if they're looking for it, but if they see
They see it, they find it, yeah.
they are required to act, and hopefully CPS will catch that. They too are required to flag it, and CPS is going to look at every single one of them.
Is there a deadline for the DPS review?
No, they're assembling a team of 4 or 5 officers. They say these sergeants will work full-time on this. And Bart Graves, the DPS spokesman, said it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give a time frame.
What is the reaction at the Capitol, the mood among lawmakers from what you hear from the governor's office? Obviously, Maelstrom, when this was first announced, what's the thought process now?
Well, in very broad strokes, you've sort of divided into 2 camps. You've got the Democrats, a lot of the Democrats, calling for Clarence Carter, the DES director, to resign, or for Governor Brewer to fire him. And they're also now calling for a special session to allocate money for more caseworkers and more staff to deal with this extra workload, not to mention all the backlogged work that hasn't been dealt with. Republicans are pretty much keeping their powder dry on that. They want to see what's going to happen with these investigations, both Director Carter's as well as the DPS investigation, before taking any action. But there's grave concern, and in terms of the work plan itself, there is a legislative oversight committee that met last month for the first time, even though they were created more than a year ago. And some of those members, most importantly, the 2 co-chairmen, Senator Bartow and Representative Brophy McGee, have both said, we got a lot more questions. This plan has it's pretty bare bones, and we need some details filled in. And
people calling for Clarence Carter's resignation or removal have to remember that that's problematic, isn't it? And just in terms of logistics, you have to find someone who's willing to come in for the final year of the governor's term.
Correct, and that's believed to be a concern out there. I mean, it's not the most desirable of jobs to begin with, and assuming Governor Brewer isn't going to run for a 3rd term, yeah, she's got a year left, and this agency Carter hasn't been able to turn it around in 3 years. Can anybody come in 1 year and do it?
Well, with that in mind, and you have so much experience at the legislature, you know those folks down there and how they think. What does this do to extra funding for extra staff at CPS, and certainly what Carter was asking for, A, and B, is there a movement afoot to just restructure CPS, get it out of DES, make it its own agency? Will those ideas have legs?
Well, to the last point, I think there definitely is interest in restructuring CPS, pulling it out of DES. Representative Kate Brophy McGee, suggested as much last week. She said, DES is just too big, and CPS, is just one part of it. Maybe it's best to take that out of there. Where to put it, she doesn't have an idea, doesn't have an answer yet. But she's working on that and we might see that in legislation when the legislature comes back in January. In terms of money, again, the Democrats are saying, look, we need to fund Clarence Carter's request for $100 million plus more dollars now, rather than waiting to the next budget year. A lot of others are saying, including some Democrats, are saying, well, we need to wait and see what comes out of these reports, and we don't want to throw good money after bad.
Last question, and we talk so much about policy, we forget the human element sometimes, but is there any indication that among these uninvestigated cases, something bad has happened to a child? And if they find that out, what happens? You don't know what you don't know. Although in testimony last week, CPS was saying that they're confident that there's no deaths attributed to this, because that would have been picked up. But harm, they don't know. If grievous harm, even mild harm is found, I think things come unglued out of the Capitol. The public reaction already is just, up in arms. Wow. Great reporting. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. For the past 6 years, local public affairs consultant Robert Johnson has been trying to find a home for a Cactus League Hall of Fame. Johnson now has fresh renderings of his proposed facility and hopes to have a site selected by the end of next year. Robert Johnson joins us now to talk about a Hall of Fame for the Cactus League. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I got to tell you, I just always kind of assumed there was a Hall of Fame for something like the Cactus League.
Well, there ought to be, because literally half of the baseball players who are in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame back in New York played out here, including people like Ty Cobb and Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Hank Aaron, you name them, they've been here.
So your plans for a Cactus League Hall of Fame, talk to us about it.
Well, we've been working on this project out of the Mesa Historical Society for 6 years. And that process has involved building a collection and support across the valley and the state and back in the markets where the teams who come here in March are from, San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, wherever. We're at the point now where as a traveling exhibit, we've had great success over 6 years. We've been all over the valley. We need to start thinking about where we will be permanently so that we can grow this product and become the off-field home of baseball in Arizona.
Sounds like an association with Mesa already exists. Is somewhere around Wrigleyville and the new Cubs spring training home, is something like that the most likely possibility?
That's one option. We have a couple of others that we're not in a position yet to talk about. We have been speaking with Mesa about this for many years now, and of course the new Cubs project has helped put a little more focus on a particular site. But there are a couple of others that are in play, and it's my hope that by sometime early next year, maybe March or April, we would have some more definition around that, and we can say here's where we're going to be and here's when we'll be open.
As far as financing is concerned, what are you looking at? What kind of financing are you looking for? Municipal funding, bonding, something along those? What are you looking at?
The scenario is different based on the potential partner. Right now we have a combination of those sorts of possibilities in play. Ideally, we want to control our own destiny and pay our own way. The organization is cash poor right now, so we're going to need to find somebody with the vision to get us there. But based on what we see and what we think is here and the market year-round, not just in baseball but tourism, we believe, based on some other experiences as well in places like Cincinnati, that in 5 or 6 years this project could pay for itself and then operate entirely as an independent organization.
What's going on in Cincinnati?
The Reds have a Hall of Fame museum and operation there right outside the Great American Ballpark. They built it and paid it off in 5 years. They only have 80,000 people a year going through it. We have 1.7 million people a year just in March, and 1 million of those folks are from out of town.
Yeah.
So we think if we could even get a portion of that group, we'd more than beat the Reds number, and over a few years we'd probably be even bigger than Cooperstown.
Now you mentioned vision. We do have some renderings here. You got kind of an outline. I want to show those and tell us exactly what that means as far as what we're looking at here.
Well, this is an overview of the project, and you can see that it includes exhibit spaces that wrap around a t-ball field, which we think would be a neat little addition to encourage families locally to come. It also has a berm, which is one of those signature items that you see at every Cactus League ballpark.
Sure.
And then lots of exhibit space where the area number 4 is and number 2. The grand entry where you see the number 7 is a place where we can do outdoor events. We can sell bricks. We can raise money out there. We can have statues of famous Cactus League ball players. It really is an opportunity to generate revenue in 5 or 6 different places all at once. This is the view from the entry court as you're walking in, that plaza I spoke about. You can either go through the arches and you see the t-ball field berm there sort of dropping down, or you can go to the left where the building comes up and enter and then get into the whole exhibition space, the museum and everything. If you go into the museum, you'll see that we have 2 different ways to go. You can go up the stairs, see some exhibits, and then come out where you see the sort of sail arches above the berm. That is an area where we could do outdoor events, where we can put the national media when they come for baseball. You can also look over into the ball field and see what's going on there, or you can go straight and under that arch and then back into the exhibit space back there. We'll have Cactus League history, but we're also kicking around the idea and had some initial talks with the National Baseball Hall of Fame for a traveling exhibit every season.
Well, and I was going to ask you that. How much is Major League Baseball involved, and do you need their okay for something like this?
They're involved from the standpoint of us working with each individual team, and there are 15 teams here every spring, and many of them stay all year and run all of their operations here. So we're talking to them individually. I think as this becomes more of a reality, when we say we're going to build it here, it will be open on this date, we'll have more concrete talks. We don't need to engage them as a partner, but we want them as a partner eventually. It's just not time for that stage yet.
And I was going to mention real quickly, it's from those draftings, those drawings. Looked a little bit like Talking Stick, looked a little bit like Camelback Ranch out there on the west side for the Dodgers. Good reason for that, isn't there?
Well, the architect, Mo Stein, and his team over at HKS here in downtown Phoenix did the work for us, and so we've partnered with them. They're doing what we call free con. They're doing it all for free, and obviously we'd like to have them finish this job with us when we get to that point.
And you got your first Hall of Fame class going to be inducted in February, is that true?
That's right.
Now, who's voting on this?
Well, initially it'll be a committee of people within the museum working on the project, but after the first season, when we get it kicked off and get the awareness through the media coverage and the like, we'll actually have the fans do it each year. And we'll put a slate up and we'll let the fans from all over the country, using Twitter and Facebook and all of those things, help weigh in. You know, all due respect to the baseball writers of America, they're a little bit unpredictable, and
Yes, they
we
are.
think that somebody ought to get inducted every year.
So you're going to let Pete Rose wander through there if he comes to town?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining, and good luck with the project.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you. Tonight's Focus on Sustainability looks at the Waste Management Northwest Regional Landfill, which is producing electricity from landfill gases for APS. Here to explain is Scott Bradley, Waste Management's Four Corners Area Vice President. Good to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So this is a landfill producing power for APS. Explain, please.
Yes. So your everyday household garbage gets picked up in a truck out to the landfill. Landfill garbage decomposes anaerobically without oxygen, creating methane and carbon dioxide. We harvest the gas, if you will, with a series of wells hooked up to a vacuum system, take it to a place where it's scrubbed and cleaned. It is used as fuel to run, for lack of a better word, a couple of big turbine engines. And the engines produce electricity, which we put into the grid and sell to APS.
And how much power are we talking about here?
About 3.2 megawatts.
And that equates to how many homes?
About 2,000 homes a year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty substantial.
And as far as offsetting other forms of energy, are we talking coal here? What's being offset?
Sure, anything you want to talk about. Coal is the the most frequently
Sure.
used terminology. So yeah, we are alleviating some need for that. Obviously, we're not replacing in total that need, but it's a piece of a renewable energy portfolio that APS has that we're proud to be a part of.
And I understand this is delivered through a PPA, a power purchase agreement. Explain what that is.
Well, it's if you produce power, if you produced it, you could sell it to the to an electrical outlet like that, like an APS in whatever state or place you were. They're obligated to buy it from you, so you have to, obviously they're not obligated to buy it from you at the price you might like to get it at,
Sure.
but you negotiate that price and it works out. And they've been a great partner. They view it as part of, as I said, as part of their renewable energy portfolio, which we like because it adds to our sustainability footprint.
Overall benefits of something like this, what do you see?
Well, nobody or not everybody, maybe outside of folks like me and my company, necessarily like a landfill. Nobody. It's a necessity right now in our world, so we're creating something that's pretty cool and pretty beneficial out of something that otherwise would not be used and might be something that someone might think of as negative. This is a positive coming out of that for sure.
Indeed, and I imagine the EPA doesn't have too many concerns here, do they?
No, it's great because otherwise this gas would either be vented off to the atmosphere, it might be flared or just burned, if you will. So we found something to do with this gas that's of great benefit to folks.
And as far as the energy is concerned, when you're talking wind and you're talking sun, you're not talking what you're doing. This is there no matter the wind, no matter the sun.
Exactly. It's a very reliable source of energy for the time in the life of that facility that the gas is being produced. It's not affected by weather. It's constant. It's there. It's produced.
Is it an economic alternative though?
It's getting better. I mean, there's I won't lie to you. There's a lot of tax credits from the federal government that have allowed a lot of these projects to get off the ground. But you're going to do something. You're going to flare this gas. You're going to let it vent. It's a great alternative. The government, much like they have done in the solar industry, have helped kind of prop it up to start, and it gets better and better each year in terms of its economics.
Now, where is this landfill's in Surprise, correct?
It's outside. It's kind of northwest of Surprise.
Northwest
yes.
of Surprise.
Yeah.
Is this the only landfill in the valley, in the state, in the area doing this?
It is our only one in the state of Arizona. I think there are two others within the greater Phoenix area. I want to say the city of Glendale's landfill has a facility, and the Indian tribe that's out off Scottsdale, off the
There you go,
101.
Fort McDowell, because
Yep.
you see the flares out there as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
Is technology advancing for this kind of a thing? Can it get better? Can you transfer more of this methane gas?
Well, I think methane gas is only a certain part of the gas that's produced in decomposing trash. I think we do a pretty good job of getting the maximum out of it that can be gotten. We'll always enhance the engines as they go forth in life to produce more power from that same amount of gas.
And do you see more of these kinds of landfills and this kind of operation in Arizona?
Absolutely.
From Waste Management, you think?
Yep. We've got some other landfills that it's a little drier climate here, so it doesn't produce gas quite like it might on the East Coast or in a place where there's more moisture. But it does eventually, and we have some other size landfills that will probably end up with a similar facility like this in the future.
But I would imagine technology where it is now, there are limits to how much power that can be produced.
Sure, and there's a limit to the life of the gas that's produced out of a landfill too. So it's a finite resource, but a resource that is certainly supplementing natural resources right now.
Is the city of Surprise involved much with this?
They are not with this project, but they are an extremely great host to us, and we're I think a valued member of their community, and we have a great partnership with the city of Surprise.
As far as landfill technology, getting away from the power aspect of it here, what does this do to all the stuff in the landfill? Does it change its composition? Is it easier to deal with, more difficult to deal with? What happens out there once the methane goes away and the other gases go away?
Well, once the decomposition stops and the gases go away, what you've got in that landfill is a bunch of inert material at that point. No more bacteria being generated by the decomposition, and in turn the gas being generated. So it's just kind of a static pile that, 500 years from now, if we were around, they'll be back digging up those facilities, I guarantee you, looking for other resources that someone decides at that point are valuable to go find. But that's the future.
And as far as the future with Waste Management and these kinds of projects, we can expect to see more in Arizona, as you mentioned.
I believe so, yes.
All right. Well, congratulations on the Pride. Sounds interesting, and it's nice to know that a landfill is serving more than one purpose.
Indeed.
Good to have you.
Thanks
For joining
Appreciate
us.
it.
Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, and just in time for the holiday shopping season, we hear about a new study that looks at customer rage. And we'll find out about ASU's Indian Legal Program, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. That's tomorrow evening at 5:30 and 10, right here on the next Arizona Horizon. And of course, we will continue to keep our eyes on that CPS story and have the latest as far as the plan to deal with those uninvestigated cases. We'll cover that for you right here on Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.